I caught my girlfriend. She cheated on me behind my back, and I have something they never expected. Here's what happened. I found out my girlfriend was cheating on me with at least 3 different people. So I put everything into a birthday card that I planned to hand her at dinner. But the internet ruined my plan before I could even get to the restaurant. And what happened next was the most chaotically satisfying breakup of my entire life. My name is Jake. At the time this story takes place, I was 26 years old, living in a mid-sized city in the Midwest, working a decent job, paying my bills on time, generally holding my life together in the unremarkable way that most 26-year-old men hold their lives together. I had a girlfriend. Her name was Nicole. We had been together for about 1.5 years, long enough for the relationship to feel established, long enough for me to have given her a key to my apartment, long enough for us to have inside jokes and favorite restaurants, and a Sunday morning routine that involved bad coffee and worse reality television. Nicole was, on the surface, everything I wanted. She was smart, funny, attractive, the kind of person who could walk into a room and immediately become the most interesting person in it. She had a laugh that you could hear from 3 rooms away and an opinion about everything and a way of making you feel like you were the only person in the world when she was looking at you. I was in love with her. Deeply, genuinely, the kind of in love where you start thinking about futures and apartments and what your kids might look like and whether you should start looking at rings. I was thinking about rings. That is the part that still gets me, even now, years later. I was actively, concretely, seriously thinking about asking this woman to marry me. I had looked at jewelry store websites. I had asked my mother about my grandmother's ring. I had started to save money in a separate account that I had labeled, embarrassingly, the Ring Fund in my banking app. I was that far gone. The discovery happened on a Wednesday afternoon. Such an ordinary day for a life to unravel. I was sitting on Nicole's couch, the same couch where we had watched 100 movies and eaten 100 takeout dinners, waiting for her to finish getting ready so we could go grab lunch. She had asked me to look something up on her laptop and had handed it to me with the casual trust of someone who believes they have nothing to hide. The laptop opened to her web browser. The web browser had a tab open. The tab was her messaging app, and the conversation on the screen was not with me. I want to be careful about how I describe what I saw, because the specific words matter less than the cumulative impact. What I saw was a conversation between Nicole and a man named Michael. A conversation that was explicitly, unmistakably romantic. Not ambiguous. Not open to interpretation. Not the kind of flirty banter that some people maintain with friends and that you could, if you squinted, explain away as harmless. This was the kind of conversation that makes your stomach drop through the floor and your vision narrow to a pinpoint and your hands go cold and numb on the keyboard. I should have closed the laptop. I should have set it down and taken a breath and confronted her directly, like a mature adult in a healthy relationship would do. Instead, I did what every single person in my situation has done since the invention of personal computers. I snooped. I scrolled through the conversation with Michael. Then I found another conversation. This one was with a man named Tyler. Then another. This one was with a person whose name I did not recognize at all. Someone Nicole had apparently been talking to for weeks. There were plans. There were dates. There were the kinds of messages that leave absolutely no room for plausible deniability. Nicole was not just talking to other people. Nicole was actively, enthusiastically, energetically maintaining relationships with multiple men while sleeping in my bed and eating at my table and kissing me goodbye every morning like nothing was wrong. I felt a lot of things in those next few minutes, sitting on that couch with her laptop growing warm on my thighs, listening to the sound of her hairdryer in the bathroom down the hall. I felt betrayal, obviously. I felt anger, the hot, pulsing kind that starts in your chest and spreads outward like fire. I felt humiliation, the realization that I had been played, that the person I was planning to ask to spend the rest of her life with me was spending significant portions of her current life with other people. And underneath all of that, underneath the rage and the shame and the disbelief, I felt something else. I felt creative. See, my birthday was coming up. In 2 days, Nicole and I had a dinner reservation at my favorite restaurant, just the two of us, a birthday dinner that she had planned and that I had been looking forward to. And as I sat there on that couch, my mind spinning through the wreckage of my relationship at 1,000 miles per hour, an idea began to form. An idea that was petty and dramatic and probably inadvisable and absolutely, positively perfect. I was going to tell her I knew, but I was not going to tell her with words. I was going to tell her with a card, a birthday card. Because what is more perfect than receiving devastating news in the format of a Hallmark greeting? I closed the laptop. I put it back exactly where she had left it. I composed my face into something resembling normalcy. When Nicole came out of the bathroom, hair done, makeup perfect, smile bright, and unsuspecting, I told her I was not feeling well and needed to skip lunch. She was disappointed. She told me she hoped I felt better. She kissed me on the forehead, and I walked out of her apartment with the key she had given me in my pocket and a plan forming in my mind that was equal parts heartbreak and genius. I drove straight to the nearest card store, one of those places with rows and rows of greeting cards organized by occasion, birthday, sympathy, congratulations, thank you, arranged in a rainbow of envelopes and fonts and illustrations. I walked down the birthday aisle slowly, deliberately, reading every card, looking for exactly the right one. I found it near the end of the row. The front of the card had a simple illustration, a cartoon weight dropping from above, and the text read, "This card will feel heavy." Perfect. I brought it home. I sat down at my kitchen table with a pen, and I opened the card to the blank interior, and I began to write. I chose my words carefully, deliberately, with the kind of attention to craft that I normally reserve for work emails and fantasy football trash talk. I wanted to be clear. I wanted to be specific. I wanted her to read it and know, without any possibility of misunderstanding, exactly what I knew and exactly what it meant. Inside the card, I taped a key, her key, the key to my apartment that she had been carrying in her purse for the better part of a year, the key that symbolized trust and access and the intimacy of shared space. Then I wrote, "Now that you're single, you don't need to feel guilty about your sexually charged texts with Michael, going on dates with Tyler, or about getting drinks tomorrow with Derek." I crossed out one name and replaced it with another, a detail I had found in the messages, a correction that demonstrated just how thoroughly I had read through her conversations. Not just a glimpse, not just a passing glance, a comprehensive, detailed, meticulous review of every lie she had told and every plan she had made and every person she had made them with. I sealed the card in an envelope. On the front of the envelope, in careful block letters, I wrote a message that was, in hindsight, probably unnecessary but deeply satisfying to write. Something to the effect of, "You're going to need this more than a birthday cake." And then I did something that would change the trajectory of this entire story in a way I could not have predicted. I took a photo of the card and posted it online. Now, I want to be clear about my thought process, or rather, my complete lack of thought process. I posted the photo because I was emotional and because sharing things online when you're emotional is the defining behavior of my generation. I did not think it would go anywhere. I did not think anyone would see it beyond my immediate circle of friends and internet acquaintances. I certainly did not think it would reach the front page of one of the largest websites on the planet within a matter of hours. But it did. The post took off like a rocket. Within an hour, it had hundreds of comments. Within 2 hours, it had thousands. People were cheering me on, offering advice, demanding updates, telling me I was a legend, warning me to document everything in my apartment in case Nicole came back and destroyed my stuff. The internet, in all its chaotic, well-meaning, boundary-challenged glory, had adopted my breakup as a collective entertainment experience. And the whole time, as the post climbed higher and higher, attracting more and more attention, I was sitting in my apartment eating leftover Chinese food and refreshing the page and feeling a strange cocktail of vindication and dread. Because there was a problem, a significant problem, a problem I had not considered when I posted the photo of a breakup card that contained specific details about specific people and a very specific relationship situation. Nicole could see it, or rather, someone who knew Nicole could see it. It was around 4 in the afternoon when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Nicole's name. I stared at it for 3 rings, took a breath, and answered. "Hey, what's up?" I said, going for casual, aiming for breezy, probably sounding like a man who has been stress-eating lo mein and refreshing a web page for 4 hours. "I was calling to ask you that," Nicole said. Her voice was different, controlled, careful. The voice of someone who has information she is not sure how to deploy. "I'm just getting some Mexican food," I said, which was a lie. I was eating Chinese food. I do not know why I lied about the cuisine. My brain was not functioning at its highest level. "Well," Nicole said, and there was a pause that lasted approximately 7 years. Aaron called me. He asked if I was okay. Aaron. For those keeping track, Aaron was Nicole's best friend, also her ex-boyfriend. A detail that had always made me uncomfortable, but that I had accepted because Nicole had insisted their friendship was purely platonic and that I was being insecure for questioning it. Aaron, the ex-boyfriend best friend, who was allowed to sleep on her couch and spend hours at her apartment and communicate with her daily, while I got the cold shoulder if I so much as mentioned a female co-worker's name in passing. "Yeah," I said. He asked if you had done anything embarrassing today. Then he sent me a picture. My stomach dropped. I could feel the Chinese food staging a revolt. "So," Nicole continued, and her voice had shifted now from careful to cold. "Is there anything you want to say to me?" I stood in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, and I had a decision to make. I could apologize for the post. I could backtrack. I could try to explain that I had been emotional and that posting the card online was an impulsive decision and that I was sorry for handling it this way. Or I could do what I should have done the moment I found those messages on her laptop. "I don't want to say anything to you," I said. And then, with a clarity and a calm that surprised even me, I added, "In fact, I don't think I want to talk to you ever again." The silence on the other end of the line was so complete, so total, that I actually checked to make sure the call had not dropped. It had not. She was there, breathing, processing, recalculating. "Do you understand why?" I asked. More silence. Long, stretching, cavernous silence. "I don't understand anything," she finally said. I almost laughed. I almost broke character and laughed out loud at the sheer audacity of that sentence. This woman, who had been juggling 3 men like a circus performer, who had been sending romantic messages to one person while planning dates with another while getting drinks with a third, this woman was claiming she did not understand anything. "Oh yeah," I said. "I think you're disrespecting me," she said. I need you to pause with me here and appreciate the full, magnificent, breathtaking absurdity of that statement. Nicole, who had been cheating on me with at least 3 people for God knows how long, who had lied to my face every single day of our relationship, who had kissed me goodbye and then texted another man before her car left the parking lot, believed that I was the one being disrespectful, that my posting a card that contained nothing but the truth, was a greater offense than her systematic, prolonged, enthusiastic betrayal of my trust. The audacity was almost beautiful, almost art. "If me posting a funny picture is disrespectful," I said, and I'm not going to pretend my voice did not shake a little, "then what is cheating and lying about it?" Another pause, shorter this time, and then, with the kind of brass-plated nerve that only a truly committed liar can muster, "Who's cheating?" I closed my eyes. I took a breath. I let the absurdity of the moment wash over me like a wave. And then I said the last words I would ever say to Nicole. "Go screw yourself. I'll leave the key in your mailbox." I hung up. I set the phone down on the counter. I stood in my kitchen in the sudden, ringing silence, and I felt, beneath the anger and the hurt and the adrenaline and the lingering taste of cold Chinese food, a sensation I had not expected. Relief. The aftermath played out online, which was fitting since the online world was where the whole plan had gone sideways in the first place. The post continued to gain traction. Comments poured in. People were outraged on my behalf, amused by the card, fascinated by the update, and deeply entertained by the detail about Aaron, the ex-boyfriend best friend who had somehow recognized Nicole's cheating behavior from a greeting card on the internet without her name ever being mentioned. Think about that for a moment. Aaron saw a photo of a card that said a woman was texting someone named Michael, dating someone named Tyler, and getting drinks with someone named Derek. The card did not mention Nicole's name. It did not mention my name. It did not mention any identifying details about our relationship or our location or anything else that would make it possible to connect the card to a specific person. And yet Aaron saw it, and immediately knew it was about Nicole. Immediately, without hesitation. He saw the description of a woman cheating with multiple people, and his first thought was, "That's my best friend," which tells you everything you need to know about how well Nicole was keeping her secrets. If your ex-boyfriend best friend can identify your cheating behavior from a vague greeting card on the internet, you are not exactly operating a covert operation. You're practically broadcasting it. Several people pointed this out in the comments, and the observation hit me like a truck. How many people in Nicole's life had known? How many of her friends, her coworkers, her acquaintances had been watching her juggle multiple relationships while I walked around oblivious, planning a proposal, saving for a ring, imagining a future that existed only in my own naive, trusting, painfully gullible mind? I do not know the answer to that question. I will probably never know. But I think about it sometimes in the quiet moments, and it still stings. There were other details that came out in the aftermath that I want to share, because they paint a picture that I think is important. Nicole's relationship with Aaron had always been a source of tension between us. He was her best friend. He was also her ex-boyfriend. He slept on her couch. He was at her apartment constantly. She spoke to him every day, sometimes multiple times a day, about everything from her work problems to her dinner plans to her feelings about our relationship. I had expressed discomfort with this arrangement more than once, and every single time, Nicole had turned it back on me. I was insecure. I was controlling. I was jealous. I was trying to isolate her from her friends. She made me feel like the villain for being uncomfortable with a situation that any reasonable person would have found, at minimum, unusual. And yet, when I so much as mentioned a female coworker in passing, in the most innocuous, workplace-appropriate context imaginable, Nicole's radar activated immediately. Who was she? What did she look like? Why was I talking about her? Was something going on? The double standard was so enormous, so blatant, so spectacularly hypocritical that it would have been funny if it had not been so effective at making me question my own judgment. This is something I have thought about a lot since the breakup, and I want to share it because I think it is a pattern that a lot of people experience but do not always recognize while they are in it. The person who is cheating is often the person who is most suspicious of their partner. The person who is lying is often the person who is most vigilant about catching lies. The person who is betraying your trust is often the person who most aggressively polices yours. It is projection, pure and simple, but when you're inside it, when you are the one being accused and deflected and gaslit, it does not feel like projection. It feels like you're the problem. It feels like your instincts are wrong and your feelings are invalid, and your discomfort is a character flaw rather than a perfectly reasonable response to a genuinely unreasonable situation. If you are in a relationship right now where your partner has close relationships that make you uncomfortable and responds to your discomfort by making you feel guilty, while simultaneously interrogating you about every interaction you have with the opposite sex, pay attention. That is not a balanced dynamic. That is not a relationship between equals. That is someone who is using your trust as a shield while they do whatever they want behind it. The card, by the way, was never delivered. It sat on my kitchen counter for about a week after the breakup. The envelope still sealed, the key still taped inside, the message still waiting for a reader who would never open it. Eventually, I threw it away. Not in a dramatic gesture, not in a moment of catharsis, just in a routine clearing of the kitchen counter where it got swept into the trash along with some junk mail and a coupon for a pizza place that had closed. The envelope survived longer. I had written something on the front that I was kind of proud of, and I snapped a photo of it before it went in the trash. That photo also ended up online, a bonus update for the thousands of strangers who have been following my breakup in real time, like it was a sporting event. Nicole and I never spoke again after that phone call. Not once. No follow-up texts. No late-night voicemails. No, I can explain emails. Nothing. Whatever she felt about the situation, whether it was remorse or anger or embarrassment or some combination of all three, she kept it to herself. She vanished from my life as completely as if she had never been in it, leaving behind nothing but a key in her mailbox and a browser history I wish I had never seen. I want to close with something that might surprise you, given the tone of this story. I do not regret posting the card. I know that might be controversial. I know there are people who would say that handling a breakup publicly is immature, that airing your relationship drama on the internet is petty, that a real man would have dealt with this privately, with dignity and discretion. And maybe those people are right. Maybe there's a version of this story where I confront Nicole calmly. We have a difficult but adult conversation. We go our separate ways with our dignity intact, and nobody on the internet ever hears about any of it. But that is not what happened. What happened is that I was 26 years old and heartbroken and angry and sitting in my apartment eating cold Chinese food while the woman I was going to propose to was making plans with 3 other men, and I made a card. A funny, devastating, brutally honest card. And I shared it with the world because keeping it to myself felt like carrying the weight alone, and I did not want to carry it alone anymore. The internet, for all its chaos and cruelty, gave me something that night. It gave me validation. It gave me thousands of strangers saying, "You did not deserve this. Her behavior was not your fault. You're going to be okay." It gave me laughter, real laughter, the kind that comes from the belly and makes the pain recede for just a moment. It gave me the feeling of being seen, of being understood, of not being alone in the worst moment of my relationship life. Was it petty? Probably. Was it immature? Possibly. Was it the healthiest way to process a devastating betrayal? Almost certainly not. But it was mine. It was my way of taking back a piece of the power that Nicole had stolen from me. She had lied. She had manipulated. She had controlled the narrative of our relationship for a year and a half, deciding what was true and what was not, who I was allowed to be friends with and who I was not, what feelings were valid and what feelings made me insecure and controlling. The card was me saying, "I see you. I know the truth, and I'm not going to keep it quiet to protect you." For anyone listening who has been cheated on, who has found the messages or the photos or the evidence that your partner's love was not what they told you it was, I want you to know this. It gets better. Not quickly. Not easily. Not without the kind of pain that makes you wonder if you will ever trust anyone again. But it does get better. And for anyone whose best friend can identify their cheating behavior from an anonymous greeting card on the internet, maybe take that as a sign that you're not as slick as you think you are. Just a thought. I want to go a little deeper into what the days after that phone call were like, because the breakup itself, the card, the phone call, the dramatic "go screw yourself" ending, that was the climax of the story. But the aftermath is where the real work happened. The first night was the hardest. After I hung up on Nicole and the adrenaline faded and the online comments slowed and the apartment got quiet, the silence hit me like a physical force. I sat on my couch, the same couch where I'd found the messages, and I stared at the wall and I felt the full weight of what had just happened settle onto my chest. I was single. For the first time in a year and a half, I was alone. The person I'd been building my life around, the person whose schedule I coordinated mine with, whose favorite restaurant I ate at, whose sleep schedule I matched, whose future I had been planning as though it were my own, was gone. Not dead, not missing, just erased. Cut out of my life with the surgical precision of a phone call that lasted less than 5 minutes. I went to bed at 9 o'clock that night because I could not think of a single reason to stay awake. I lay in the dark and I did what every heartbroken person does in the dark. I replayed everything. Every conversation. Every red flag I had missed. Every moment where something felt slightly off and I had told myself I was imagining it. I was being paranoid. I was that insecure boyfriend she kept telling me I was. The time she left the room to take a phone call and came back flushed and distracted. The time she canceled our plans at the last minute with an excuse that did not quite add up. The time she spent 45 minutes in the bathroom getting ready while I sat in the living room scrolling through my phone, not knowing that she was in there texting someone else. The time she accused me of flirting with a waitress who had done nothing more than smile at me while taking our order, and I had spent the rest of the evening apologizing for something I had not done while she sat across the table with the righteous indignation of a woman whose own behavior was far, far worse than anything she was accusing me of. I saw it all so clearly now. Every manipulation, every deflection, every time she had turned my justified suspicion back on me and made me feel like the problem. It was like those optical illusions where you stare at a picture and see one thing, and then suddenly your brain shifts and you see something completely different, and you can never unsee it. Nicole's face, which I had found so beautiful for a year and a half. now looked different in my memory. The same features, the same smile, the same eyes, but the expression behind them had changed. Where I had once seen warmth, I now saw calculation. Where I had once seen love, I now saw performance. The second day was slightly better, which is not saying much. I woke up feeling hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides and left just the shell. I went to work because the alternative was lying in bed and descending further into the replay cycle. And work at least gave me something to focus on that was not the wreckage of my personal life. My coworkers, the ones who knew about the situation, which by this point was most of them because the internet is not exactly a vault, were kind. They brought me coffee and told me bad jokes and did not ask me to elaborate on what had happened unless I brought up first. One of them, a guy named Chris who I had never been particularly close to, stopped by my desk around noon and set down a bag of tacos and said, "You look like a man who needs tacos," and walked away without another word. It was the most emotionally intelligent thing anyone did for me that entire week, and I still think about it sometimes. By the end of the first week, the initial shock had started to wear off and was being replaced by something more complicated. Not anger exactly, though there was plenty of that. Not sadness exactly, though that was there too. It was more like a kind of bewildered inventory taking, a reckoning with the fact that large portions of my recent history were not what I thought they were. Every memory I had of Nicole was now suspect. Every "I love you," she had said carried an asterisk. Every plan we had made, the trips we talked about, the apartment we were going to get together, the vague, shimmering future I had been building in my mind, all of it was gone. Not just gone. It had never existed. It had been a one-sided construction, a fantasy built on a foundation of lies, and the blueprints had been mine alone. I deleted the Ring fund account. That was a specific moment I remember very clearly, about 10 days after the breakup. I logged into my banking app, found a savings account labeled the Ring Fund, stared at the balance for a long time, and then transferred the money back to my checking account and closed it. It was not a lot of money, a few $100s, barely enough for a down payment on the kind of ring she would have wanted. But closing that account felt like more than a financial transaction. It felt like closing a door to a room I had been decorating for a future that was never going to happen. I took myself to dinner that night with some of the Ring Fund money. A nice restaurant, the kind of place with cloth napkins and a sommelier and prices that would normally make me reach for a calculator. I sat at a table for one, and I ordered a steak, and I drank a glass of wine that cost more than my usual bottle, and I ate slowly and deliberately, and I looked around the restaurant at the couples at other tables, the ones holding hands and laughing and leaning toward each other with the easy intimacy of people in love, and I felt a complicated thing. I felt envy. I felt loss. But underneath those feelings, underneath the pain that was still fresh and raw and unprocessed, I felt something else. I felt the faintest, barely perceptible flicker of something that might, with time and distance and healing, eventually grow into gratitude. Gratitude that I had found out before the ring, before the proposal, before a mortgage and a lease and a wedding and children and all the thousand entanglements that would have made the truth, when it eventually came out, 1,000 times more devastating than it already was. Nicole had cheated on me. That was awful. That was a betrayal that would take me a long time to recover from. But she had cheated on me while we were dating, while the only thing binding us together was a set of house keys and a collection of share passwords. She had not cheated on me while we were married. She had not cheated on me while I was paying for our children's daycare. She had not cheated on me while my name was on a mortgage and my life was legally intertwined with hers in ways that would take lawyers and judges and years to untangle. I'd found out in time. The laptop had been left open. The messages had been visible. The truth had presented itself to me before I had a chance to make the most expensive mistake of my life. That is what I hold on to now, years later, when the memory surfaces and the old hurt give a little throb. I hold on to the timing. I hold on to the fact that the universe, or luck, or whatever force governs the random events of our lives, chose to show me the truth at exactly the right moment. Not too late. Not after the ring. Not after the wedding. Not after I had built an entire life on a lie. Just in time. Just barely, narrowly, breathtakingly in time. And if that meant the grand plan for the birthday card got ruined by an ex-boyfriend best friend who recognized cheating behavior from an anonymous post on the internet, well, that was a small price to pay. Some stories do not end the way you plan them. Some stories are better for the chaos. Mine was one of those. One last thing. About a year after the breakup, I ran into Aaron, Nicole's ex-boyfriend best friend, the one who had seen the card online and called her and ruined the whole beautiful plan before I could hand it to her at dinner. We were at a bar, the kind of random encounter that happens in mid-sized cities where everyone is 3 degrees of separation from everyone else. He recognized me. I recognized him. There was an awkward moment where we both decided whether to pretend we had not seen each other or to acknowledge the connection we shared through a woman neither of us had spoken to in months. He walked over. He bought me a beer. He sat down on a stool next to mine and said, without preamble, "Sorry, I ruined your card thing. That was a good card." I laughed. What else could I do? How'd you even know it was her? I asked. There were no names. No identifying details. Nothing. Aaron took a long sip of his beer and set it down carefully on the bar. "Man," he said, "she was doing that stuff right in front of everyone. Everyone knew except you." He said it without malice, without judgment, just a statement of fact. And I sat there on that bar stool and I absorbed it and I nodded and I drank my beer and I thought, everyone knew except me. That should have made me angry. And maybe a few months earlier it would have. But in that moment, in that bar, with a year of distance between me and the worst discovery of my life, it just made me tired. Tired and a little sad and, underneath it all, quietly grateful that I was sitting on a bar stool drinking a beer with a man I barely knew instead of sitting across a dinner table from a woman who had been lying to me every single day. Aaron and I finished our beers. We shook hands. We went our separate ways. I never saw him again. I never saw Nicole again. And the card, the famous card, the one that almost broke the internet and definitely broke my relationship, lives on as a screenshot somewhere in the vast digital archive of human drama. A small, funny, heartbreaking reminder that sometimes the best birthday gift you can give yourself is the truth. Even when the truth hurts. Especially when the truth hurts. Hey everyone, we're working toward 1,000 subscribers on this channel. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button. Every one of you brings us closer. Thanks so much.